The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Ambassador Alara Voss stepped forward, her footsteps echoing across the polished stone floor. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her face remained calm. This was humanity's moment of truth. The chamber was unlike anything humans had ever built. It stretched upward for hundreds of meters, its ceiling a perfect dome that mirrored the galaxy itself, stars and nebulae swirling in real-time display. Thousands of alien representatives watched from tiered seating that circled the central platform where Alara now stood. Some leaned forward on multiple limbs, others floated in containment fields. A few existed as shimmering clouds of light. 7 massive thrones towered at the far end, each occupied by a member of the High Council, the rulers of the largest galactic empire in known space. Ambassador Voss of Earth, announced a melodic, disembodied voice that resonated through the chamber. You stand before the galactic hegemony on a matter of grave concern. Alara nodded respectfully. 3 years ago, humanity had been welcomed into the hegemony as a developing species. The terms were clear. Earth could join the interstellar community, gain access to advanced technologies, and establish colonies on unclaimed worlds. In return, humans would follow hegemony law, including the ban on specialized military forces that might threaten galactic peace. High Counselors, Alara said, her voice steady despite her nerves. Earth is honored by your attention. How may we address your concerns? The central figure leaned forward. High Counselor Dravteth's crystalline body caught the light, sending rainbow reflections across the chamber. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. We have received troubling reports, he said. Footage from the mining colony on Proxima Centauri shows humans displaying combat capabilities far beyond what your species claimed during admission interviews. A holographic display flared to life above the central floor. The gathered aliens watched as ordinary human miners, scientists, engineers, and administrators fought off an attack by Scourge Raiders. The Raiders were infamous throughout the galaxy, heavily armed and genetically enhanced for combat. Yet the footage showed humans moving with incredible coordination, using mining tools as weapons, their movements precise and effective. This was not an isolated incident, said another counselor, a being that resembled a massive tentacled plant. Similar events have been recorded on 3 other human outposts. Alara watched the footage with growing unease. She had hoped for more time before this conversation became necessary. You claimed to have disbanded your military special forces as required by hegemony law, continued Dravteth. These recordings suggest otherwise. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Several delegates rose from their seats, mandibles clicking and tentacles waving in agitation. The Terrans deceived us, shouted a delegate from the lower tiers. They brought warriors among us disguised as civilians. Quarantine their worlds immediately. Alara raised her hand, and to her surprise, the chamber quieted. She took a deep breath. Respected counselors, she said, there has been no deception. Earth truly has no special forces units. Explain the footage, demanded a counselor whose body was wreathed in blue flame. Alara gestured to the frozen image hovering above her. These are not elite warriors. The man leading the defense is Dr. Thomas Wells, a geologist. Beside him is engineer Priya Kapoor, who designed mining drill improvements. The others are administrators, technicians, and scientists. You expect us to believe these are not combat specialists? The plant-like counselor's voice dripped with skepticism. They are not, Alara confirmed. What you're seeing is something fundamental to human nature that we didn't fully explain during our admission interviews. The crystalline counselor's surface rippled with color, the equivalent of a frown. Speak plainly, Ambassador. Alara squared her shoulders. Earth has no special forces because every human is a special force. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Security drones dropped from hidden compartments in the ceiling, energy weapons trained on Alara. She continued despite the chaos. Humans evolved on a death world by galactic standards. Our planet's gravity, atmospheric conditions, temperature ranges, and biodiversity created unique evolutionary pressures. We developed as generalists rather than specialists. This does not explain combat prowess, said Dravteth. In times of danger, Alara explained, humans undergo biological changes. Our bodies release chemicals that enhance strength, speed, and pain tolerance. Our brains process information faster. We call it the fight-or-flight response. But more importantly, humans possess an unusual ability to coordinate under stress, to form instant tactical groups without prior training. The delegates were silent now, watching her with a mixture of disbelief and growing unease. Those miners weren't executing practiced maneuvers, Ilara continued. They were ordinary people whose bodies and minds transformed under threat. This capability exists in all humans to varying degrees. One of the counselors leaned forward, compound eyes blinking rapidly. You're claiming your entire species consists of combat-capable individuals? Not by design or choice, Ilara clarified. It's simply how we evolved. Every human carries this potential. The chamber remained silent for several long moments. Then Dravteth spoke, his tone grave. If what you say is true, Ambassador, the hegemony faces an unprecedented situation. No species has been admitted that possesses such distributed military capability. We came in peace, Ilara emphasized. Humans desire cooperation, not conflict. We've followed every regulation regarding conventional weapons and fleets. Yet your very nature may violate our most fundamental security protocols, said the flame-wrapped counselor. Dravteth raised a crystalline appendage. The council must deliberate. Ambassador Voss, you will remain on the station. We require verification of these claims. Ilara nodded, knowing what would come next. Tests, demonstrations, and eventually, a decision that would determine humanity's future among the stars. As she was escorted from the chamber, she caught whispers among the delegates. Some spoke of threat, others of opportunity. All of them now looked at humans differently, not as the newcomers, the primitives fresh from their first warp flight. They looked at humans with fear, and Ilara knew the galaxy would never be the same again. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Reed stood alone in the stark white preparation chamber of the Celadus testing facility. Beyond the walls, thousands of alien dignitaries had gathered to witness what the Galactic Council was calling the Human Capability Assessment. Marcus knew the truth. This was a trial, and humanity's future hung in the balance. 3 days had passed since Ambassador Voss's revelation in the council chamber. The news had spread across the hegemony like wildfire. Humans weren't just a primitive newcomer species. They were potentially living weapons, every single one of them. Marcus rolled his shoulders, trying to release the tension building there. He was no special forces operator, just a regular naval officer who had volunteered for diplomatic service after first contact. Now he would represent his entire species. The door slid open and a tall, spindly alien with iridescent skin entered. Lomar was Marcus's assigned observer from the council. The assessment begins in 10 minutes, Lomar said, 4 eyes blinking in sequence. The High Council has approved the final protocol. You will face a series of challenges against champions from various hegemony species. Marcus nodded. What kinds of challenges? Combat problem-solving, endurance, and adaptation scenarios. Lomar replied, studying Marcus with obvious curiosity. Is it true that you can transform? Like the miners in the footage? That's not exactly how it works, Marcus said. We don't transform like characters in fiction, we adapt. Our bodies respond to stress with biological changes that enhance performance temporarily. Lomar's skin flickered with patterns that Marcus had learned indicated skepticism. Such claims require evidence. That's why I'm here, Marcus replied simply. The chamber's main door opened to reveal a massive arena. The ceiling rose hundreds of meters above, open to Celadus's purple sky. Tiered seating surrounded the central floor where various stations had been set up. Obstacle courses, weapon racks, and equipment Marcus didn't recognize. As he walked into the arena, a hush fell over the crowd. Thousands of alien faces turned toward him. Some species he recognized from briefings: the crystalline Lithari, the multi-limbed Vex, the gaseous aeromorphs contained in their floating shells. Others were completely unfamiliar. At the far end of the arena stood a group of 7 aliens, each from a different species. Their postures radiated confidence, even arrogance. These would be his opponents, specialists chosen from across the hegemony. The announcement system activated with a low tone. Attention. The human capability assessment will proceed in 5 phases. Observers will note that the human representative has received no special training beyond standard military orientation and has been provided no performance-enhancing substances. Marcus approached. The starting position as the first challenge was announced. Phase 1. Endurance under extreme conditions. For the next 16 hours, Marcus was pushed to his limits. He ran an ultramarathon course against a 4-legged Kintari speed specialist. He endured temperature chambers that shifted from near freezing to sweltering heat alongside a Draconis environmental adapter. He solved complex puzzles while being subjected to sleep deprivation that would have incapacitated most species. Each time, the alien specialists started strong, showcasing their evolved advantages. But as the tests continued, Marcus demonstrated what humans did best. He kept going, adapting his approach, finding reserves of energy when his body should have failed. By the 10th hour, 3 of his alien opponents had withdrawn, their specialized bodies unable to maintain performance across such varied challenges. Marcus was exhausted, dehydrated, and in pain, but he continued. In the observation booth, Dr. Talia Novak watched with growing concern. As Earth's leading xenobiologist, she had been tasked with explaining human physiology to the Council. Now she monitored Marcus's vital signs, wincing at what she saw. "He needs to stop," she told the counselor beside her. "His cortisol levels are dangerously high. Heart rate elevated beyond safe parameters." The crystalline counselor, Dravteth, turned facets toward her that reflected her own worried face. "Is this not the stress response you described? The transformation?" "Yes, but extended activation causes damage. It's meant for short bursts, not marathon sessions." Talia's fingers flew over her console, compiling data. "What the Council doesn't understand is that this isn't some special ability. It's a survival mechanism with serious costs." Below, Marcus had entered the final phase, combat assessment. He faced the Drazari Warmaster, a being genetically engineered for battle, with reflexes twice as fast as a human's and skin like natural armor. The rules were simple. Disable your opponent using the provided training weapons. The Drazari chose a curved blade that extended from a wrist gauntlet, a weapon its species had used for thousands of years. Marcus, exhausted from the previous trials, selected nothing. A murmur went through the crowd. The Drazari's facial ridges pulled back in what might have been a smile. "Begin," announced the system. The Drazari attacked with blinding speed, blade flashing in complex patterns taught by generations of warrior instructors. Marcus dodged, his movements slower than normal but still surprisingly effective. He wasn't trying to win with superior speed or strength. He was watching, learning, identifying patterns. On the third exchange, the Drazari scored a hit, drawing a line of blood across Marcus's arm. In the stands, several delegates nodded in satisfaction. The natural order was asserting itself, but something changed in Marcus's eyes. His pupils dilated, his breathing steadied. The pain from 16 hours of brutal testing seemed to fall away. The Drazari attacked again, expecting the same defense. Instead, Marcus stepped into the attack using the environment in ways no one had anticipated. He grabbed a handful of sand from the arena floor, flung it upward, then used a piece of equipment from an earlier test as an improvised shield. Within minutes, the pattern of the fight had completely changed. The Drazari's specialized training became a liability. It had learned one perfect way to fight. Marcus kept changing the parameters, forcing his opponent to adapt to situations its training hadn't covered. When the end came, it was almost anticlimactic. The Drazari overextended. Marcus trapped its blade arm against its own body and both fell to the ground. They rolled once, and when they stopped, Marcus had his opponent in a simple but effective hold, the Drazari's own blade hovering near its throat. Silence fell over the arena. Then chaos erupted as hidden weapons platforms emerged from the ceiling, energy weapons focusing on the arena floor. "Threat detected," announced an automated system. "Containment protocols activated." Marcus released the Drazari immediately, raising his hands. "What's happening?" Lomar rushed onto the floor. "Someone has overridden the security systems." "They're targeting you!" In the observation booth, Talia's console flashed with warnings. "Someone's accessing my research files on human physiology." The first shots fired. narrowly missing Marcus as he dove for cover. The Drazari War Master, rather than retreating, moved to provide cover for the human who had just defeated him, a warrior's respect transcending species. As energy bolts rained down, Marcus felt the familiar chemical surge of adrenaline, but this time, it wasn't just his body responding to threat. It was his mind calculating angles, identifying blind spots, formulating a plan to protect not just himself but everyone in the arena. The very demonstration, meant to determine if humans were too dangerous to join the hegemony, was about to reveal just how right they were to be afraid, and just how wrong they were about the reason. The research outpost on Europa hung in perpetual twilight, its massive dome illuminated by the reflected light of distant Jupiter. Inside, Commander Ariel Reyes stared at her communication console with growing unease. For the third time in an hour, the connection to the orbital relay had dropped. "System diagnostic complete," announced the station AI. "No internal malfunctions detected." Ariel frowned. "Run external scan, full spectrum." Before the AI could respond, the lights throughout the facility flickered, then died. Emergency power, activated seconds later, bathing everything in dim red light. "External communications offline," the AI reported. "Station defense systems offline. Life support operating on backup power." Ariel's military training kicked in immediately. "Secure all sections. Alert all personnel to emergency stations." She reached for the station-wide comm system but hesitated when a strange sound echoed through the ventilation system. A rhythmic clicking, followed by something heavy moving through spaces too small for any human. They weren't alone anymore. Halfway across the galaxy, in an emergency session of the Galactic Council, Ambassador Ilara Voss faced accusation after accusation. First the mining colony incidents, then the chaos at the Celadus testing facility, and now reports of human warships mobilizing near the Arcturus Junction. The plant-like counselor's vines twisted in agitation. "These are not the actions of a peaceful species." Ilara maintained her composure despite her exhaustion. For weeks she had been defending humanity against growing fear and suspicion. The demonstration at Celadus had been meant to clarify humanity's nature. Instead, the assassination attempt, orchestrated by a faction calling themselves the Preservers, had only deepened the crisis. "Our ships are responding to distress calls from our outposts," Ilara explained. "We've lost contact with 3 research stations in the past week. We suspect targeted attacks." "Convenient timing," rumbled Dravteth, the crystalline counselor. "Perhaps staged to justify military deployment?" Ilara's patience finally broke. "With respect, counselor, humans are dying. While we debate in this chamber, someone is targeting isolated human outposts. We need action, not accusations." The council chamber fell silent. Then a new figure stepped onto the speaking platform. A massive being covered in dark plates of natural armor, moving with predatory grace despite its bulk. "I may provide clarity," it said, voice resonating through some kind of translation device. "I am Krath, representative of the Collectors Guild." Ilara felt a chill run through her. The Collectors Guild was infamous, an organization that acquired rare specimens for private collectors and research facilities across the galaxy. Their methods were notoriously brutal. "What business does the Guild have with this council?" demanded the fiery counselor. "Information to trade," Krath replied simply. "About the humans." Back on Europa, Ariel Reyes led her team of 12 research scientists through the darkened lower levels of the station. None of them were soldiers. The most dangerous thing they'd handled before today were ice core samples and microbial cultures. "Dr. Patel, what's our status?" Ariel whispered, as they paused at a junction. The older scientist checked his tablet. "Life support stable on emergency power, but the temperature's dropping in sections 5 through 9. Something's damaged the thermal regulators." "Or someone's trying to hurt us," Ariel said grimly. A crash echoed from the corridor behind them, followed by the same clicking sound Ariel had heard earlier, louder now and faster. Whatever was hunting them was getting closer. "Everyone into the sample storage room," Ariel ordered. Now. They hurried into the reinforced chamber where Europa's ice core samples were kept. As the last scientist entered, Ariel caught a glimpse of something moving in the shadows, a massive shape that seemed to blend with the darkness itself. She slammed the door shut and engaged the manual lock, knowing it wouldn't hold for long. "Commander, what is that thing?" asked Dr. Lin, the youngest team member, voice shaking. "I don't know," Ariel admitted. "But it cut external communications first, then defense systems. That's not random, that's hunting protocol." The scientists exchanged frightened glances. They were researchers, not fighters, but Ariel saw something else in their eyes too. Determination, focus, the human mind beginning its ancient transformation from peaceful civilian to survival specialist. "We need weapons," said Dr. Volkov, the geophysicist. "The drilling equipment in Storage Bay 2 has laser cutters." "Too far," Ariel said. "We work with what's here." She surveyed the room. "Liquid nitrogen canisters, sample preservation chemicals. Dr. Patel, what's the coldest substance we store here?" A slow smile spread across the scientist's face. "The methane ice cores, negative 180 degrees Celsius." "Perfect," Ariel said. "Here's the plan." In the council chamber, Krath's revelation had caused an uproar. "The Collector has been targeting human outposts?" Ilara's voice cut through the chaos. Why wasn't this information shared immediately? Krath's armored plates shifted in what might have been a shrug. "The Guild does not involve itself in politics. We merely observe and collect. But what the Collector has found about humans is unusual enough to warrant intervention." "Explain," demanded Dravteth. Krath activated a holographic projector. It displayed footage from previous human outpost attacks, but from the attacker's perspective. The counselors watched as the Collector, a massive predatory being evolved for stealth and killing, methodically disabled each station's defenses before entering. "The Collector has acquired specimens from 3,412 species," Krath explained. "His methodology is flawless, yet with humans, unexpected difficulties arose." The footage shifted to show humans responding to the attacks. Not with panic, as most species did when faced with the galaxy's most lethal hunter. Not with futile resistance. But with something the Council had never seen before: instantaneous adaptation and coordination. "Observe," said Krath, highlighting a group of human scientists using laboratory equipment to create improvised traps. No military training, no weapons, no prior experience with this threat. Yet within minutes they function as a coordinated unit. The Council watched in silence as ordinary humans transformed under pressure, not physically but behaviorally. Communication became efficient. Decision-making accelerated. Innovation flourished under conditions that would paralyze most species with fear. "The Collector has never failed to acquire a specimen," Krath continued. "Until humans. They are not stronger, faster, or more technologically advanced than many species, but they possess something else. A state of mind the Collector calls battle clarity. On Europa, that clarity had fully descended on Ariel and her team. The pounding on the sample room door had become rhythmic as the hunter tried to break through. They had minutes at most. "Positions, everyone," Ariel called out. The scientists moved with surprising coordination, each knowing their role in the hastily devised plan. When the reinforced door finally gave way, the Collector entered cautiously. Its massive form filled the doorway, armored plates shifting to reveal sensory organs adapted for tracking prey across thousands of worlds. Through specialized vision, it saw heat signatures scattered throughout the room, humans hiding ineffectively behind storage containers. The trap was obvious, too obvious. The Collector hesitated. That moment of hesitation was all Ariel's team needed. "Now!" she shouted. The overhead containers released their contents, supercooled methane ice combined with catalyst chemicals from the lab. The temperature in the room plummeted instantly. The Collector's armored plates, evolved for flexibility, became brittle in the extreme cold. Simultaneously, Dr. Lin activated the emergency pressure equalization system. The chamber's atmosphere, vented partially, creating a swirling vortex of frigid air around the collector. It roared in pain and surprise, emotions it had rarely experienced in centuries of hunting. As the collector struggled, Ariel led the attack, not with violence, but with science, exploiting weaknesses in the creature's biology that only researchers intimately familiar with extreme environments would recognize. Back in the council chamber, the footage from Europa was being transmitted live through emergency channels. The counselors watched in stunned silence as human researchers, scientists, not warriors, systematically neutralized the galaxy's most feared predator using nothing but laboratory equipment and environmental knowledge. This is what we failed to understand about humans, Krath concluded. They are not special forces in the way we define such things. They do not maintain elite units trained for combat. The armored being turned to face the council directly. They are something far more dangerous. They are adapters. Every human carries the potential to become what the situation requires. The galaxy has never encountered such a species before. Alara stepped forward. And now you understand why we tried to explain this carefully. Humans don't want to fight. We want to belong. But if threatened... She gestured to the hologram showing the Europa team successfully containing the now subdued collector. If threatened, she continued, every human becomes what you see here, not because we choose violence, but because we evolved to survive. As the council chamber erupted in urgent discussion, Alara could see the shift in how they perceived humanity. No longer just primitive newcomers or potential threats. Something much more complex, something the galaxy had never prepared for. Professor Leo Alvarez stood in reverent silence as the massive doors to the Hegemony Genetic Archive slid open. The circular chamber beyond stretched 100 meters across, its walls lined with glowing data columns that contained the genetic records of every known species in the galaxy. At the center stood a crystalline processing core that hummed with quiet power. I never thought I would see this place, Leo whispered to his alien counterpart. Dr. Zixvan's translucent body rippled with patterns of acknowledgement. The myriad xenobiologist was one of the Hegemony's foremost genetic experts, with a mind capable of processing genetic sequences as easily as humans read books. Few outsiders are granted access, Zixvan replied, voice like chiming bells. But recent events have made your species a priority for study. Leo nodded grimly. 3 weeks had passed since the confrontation on Europa. The capture of the collector had sent shockwaves through the galactic community. While Ambassador Voss continued diplomatic efforts in the Council, a different kind of investigation had begun, one that probed the very origins of humanity. The archive contains genetic samples from over 20,000 sapient species, Zixvan explained as they approached the central console. If we are to understand what makes humans unique, we must view your species in evolutionary context. Leo placed his palm on the scanner. The system hummed, extracting a sample of his DNA. The central display flared to life, showing the familiar double helix of human genetic code, then expanding to show comparative analyses with other species. Zixvan's body changed color in what Leo had learned indicated surprise. Fascinating. The preliminary comparison shows something unexpected. What is it? Leo leaned closer. Genetic markers that don't follow standard evolutionary patterns. Zixvan manipulated the display with delicate tendrils. Most species show clear genetic lineage, gradual changes over millions of years. Humans have discontinuities. Leo frowned. What kind of discontinuities? Before Zixvan could answer, a new alert flashed on the display. The system had found partial matches to human DNA in an unexpected database, the precursor archives. That's impossible, Zixvan whispered. Leo knew enough about galactic history to understand why. The precursors were a mysterious species that had apparently seeded life throughout the galaxy, before vanishing millions of years ago. Their technology still defied understanding, and evidence of their existence was exceedingly rare. The system is requesting Archive Administrator authorization to access these files, Zixvan said. A new figure entered the chamber, a tall, angular being with 6 limbs and a head that seemed to shift between different shapes. Administrator Thox was the keeper of the archive, responsible for its most classified sections. The request has been noted, Thox said, voice resonating oddly in the chamber, and granted given current circumstances. The administrator approached the console, placed 3 hands on separate interfaces, and spoke in a language Leo's translator couldn't process. The central crystal pulsed with light and new data flooded the displays. What they found in the next hours would change galactic history forever. Meanwhile, in near-Earth space, a crisis was unfolding. A preserver battle group, ships belonging to the extremist faction that viewed humanity as an existential threat, had bypassed hegemony patrols and entered the Sol system. Their target, Earth's lunar colonies. Admiral Jackson Torres stood on the bridge of the EDF Resilient, Earth's largest defense vessel. Though impressive by human standards, it was barely the size of the smallest preserver ship now approaching. "Status report," Torres ordered, voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. 5 preserver warships on approach to lunar colony Armstrong, reported his tactical officer. "Their weapons are powered and targeting systems active." "Open a channel," Torres said. "All frequencies." When the connection was established, Torres spoke clearly and calmly. "Attention, preserver vessels. This is Admiral Torres of Earth Defense Force. You have entered a protected system without authorization. Power down weapons and state your purpose." The response came as a burst of energy fire that illuminated space around the Resilient. "The shields held, but barely." "Message received," Torres said grimly. "All ships, defensive formation Theta. Prioritize colony protection. And activate the Ripple Protocol." His communications officer looked up sharply. "Sir, the Ripple Protocol hasn't been tested in combat conditions." "No time like the present," Torres replied. "Send the alert." Throughout the Sol system, on Earth and its colonies, every connected device received the same message. Ripple Protocol active. Coordinated defense required. Lunar colonies under attack. What happened next astounded even the humans who participated. Millions of civilians, office workers, teachers, farmers, artists, stopped what they were doing and turned to their nearest communication device. They logged into the Emergency Response Network, a system designed after first contact that allowed regular citizens to contribute to crisis situations. Engineers offered real-time analysis of preserver ship weaknesses. Retired military personnel provided tactical suggestions. Mathematicians calculated optimal defense patterns. Millions of individual humans acting independently yet in perfect coordination created a collective intelligence that began problem-solving at a scale never before seen. In the genetic archive, Leo and Zixvan had made their discovery. "It's not a coincidence," Leo said, staring at the data in disbelief. "Humans weren't just randomly evolved. We were engineered." The genetic evidence was clear. Approximately 150,000 years ago, something had intervened in human evolution. Subtle genetic modifications had been introduced to an early human ancestor. Changes that enhanced neural connectivity, stress response optimization, and social coordination capabilities. "The precursors created you," Zixvan confirmed. "Not from nothing, they used existing primitive hominids. But they enhanced them in specific ways." Administrator Thox's form shifted thoughtfully. "The question is why? The precursors disappeared millions of years ago. Why would they engineer a species that wouldn't reach space until long after they were gone?" "There's more," said Leo, pointing to a section of the display. "These markers, they're paired with epigenetic triggers, designed to activate under specific conditions." "Stress conditions," Zixvan realized. "The very conditions that caused the transformation your ambassador described to the Council." Leo nodded slowly. "We weren't designed as weapons. We were designed as problem solvers. The fight-or-flight response isn't just about combat. It's about rapid adaptation to unexpected challenges." As they spoke, the archive's communication system activated. News of the preserver attack on the lunar colonies was spreading throughout the hegemony. Emergency sessions of the Council had been called. "We need to get this information to Ambassador Voss immediately," Leo said. "It changes everything about how the galaxy should view humanity." Back in the Sol system, the battle had taken an unexpected turn. The preserver ships, expecting to face a handful of primitive human vessels, instead encountered a defense that adapted with bewildering speed. What began as a simple attack had triggered humanity's most powerful and least understood capability: collective escalation. From individual humans responding to crisis, A networked intelligence had emerged, greater than the sum of its parts. Earth's ships executed maneuvers the preservers couldn't predict. Defensive systems reconfigured in ways that shouldn't have been possible without central command. And behind it all, millions of human minds working together, finding patterns, identifying weaknesses, improvising solutions. On the bridge of the Resilient, Admiral Torres watched as the Ripple Protocol exceeded all expectations. The tide was turning. "Sir," called his communications officer. "Priority message from the Galactic Council. They're demanding an immediate ceasefire from all parties." Torres frowned. "The preservers attacked us without provocation." "Yes, sir, but..." The officer hesitated. "The Council is concerned about the scale of human response. Our defensive mobilization has triggered alarm protocols throughout the hegemony. They're calling it species-wide militarization and citing it as evidence of exactly what the preservers claimed we were." Torres looked at his tactical display. The preserver ships were in retreat, their initial advantage completely nullified by humanity's collective response. "The irony," he said quietly. "They attacked because they feared what we might become. In doing so, they forced us to become exactly that." He straightened his uniform. "Open a channel to the Council, and recall all ships to defensive positions only. We've made our point." In the Council chamber, Ambassador Alara Voss received the transmission from the genetic archive, just moments before facing the emergency session. As she read the findings, a weight lifted from her shoulders. For the first time since this crisis began, she had answers, real answers, about humanity's place in the galaxy. As the accusations flew around her, claims that humans had demonstrated their true nature as a dangerous, militaristic species, Alara waited patiently for her turn to speak. When it came, she stepped forward with new confidence. "Honored counselors," she began, "today you've seen what happens when humans are threatened. Now let me show you why we were made this way." The ancient archive hummed with power that hadn't been fully awakened in millennia. The circular chamber located beneath the Galactic Council's main halls was the oldest structure known to exist in the galaxy, a relic of the long-vanished precursors. Its walls were lined with crystalline data matrices that contained the collected wisdom of a civilization that had mastered the stars when most current species were still evolving on their homeworlds. Representative Maya Wilson stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by the most powerful leaders from across the hegemony. After weeks of crisis and confrontation, this gathering represented humanity's last chance to prevent either quarantine or war. "Thank you for agreeing to this unprecedented meeting," Maya began. Her voice echoed slightly in the ancient space. "What I'm about to share with you cannot be properly conveyed in the council chamber." The 7 high counselors watched her with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Behind them stood representatives from 20 major galactic powers, along with scientific experts, military leaders, and cultural observers. Every word Maya spoke was being transmitted to billions of beings throughout hegemony space. "You've seen what humans become when threatened," she continued. "The miners who fought off raiders, the scientists who captured the Collector, the collective defense of our lunar colonies. But these incidents show only one facet of our nature. You haven't seen what we truly are," Maya gestured, and holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing scenes from Earth and human colonies throughout the stars. "This is Dr. James Riley," she said, highlighting an image of a human doctor working alongside alien medical staff on a hegemony relief ship. When plague struck the Tannhauser system, he developed a neural interface that allowed him to experience symptoms as the Melrose do, a species with a completely different biology from our own. His empathic approach led to the cure that saved millions. She shifted the display. "This is Engineer Kai Yamamoto." When communication failed between the Vortec and Lentari delegations, 2 species that perceive reality so differently they had never achieved meaningful dialogue, Kai created a translation system based not on language, but on shared emotional patterns. Image after image appeared, humans working throughout hegemony space, often in roles that no one had assigned them, solving problems no one had expected them to tackle. "These are not exceptional individuals," Maya explained. "They represent what any human can become when facing not danger but challenge. The same adaptive capability that makes us formidable in conflict makes us exceptional at connection." Drav Teth, the crystalline counselor, leaned forward. Your argument is noted, Representative Wilson, but it does not address the fundamental concern. A species that can rapidly militarize its entire population represents an unprecedented threat to galactic stability. Maya nodded. I understand your concern, Counselor. That's why we're here in this particular chamber. She turned to face the ancient walls. The genetic research conducted by Professor Alvarez and Dr. Zixvan revealed that humans were engineered by the precursors. What they couldn't determine was why. I believe this archive holds the answer. The plant-like counselor's vines twisted skeptically. The ancient archive has been studied for thousands of years. If it contained information about humans, we would have discovered it long ago. Perhaps, Maya agreed, unless the information was coded to respond only to human genetic markers. She approached a crystalline interface that jutted from the floor, a simple pedestal that had never responded to any attempt at activation. Maya placed her palm on its surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then light began to spiral up her arm, scanning her at the cellular level. The entire chamber hummed with energy as ancient systems awakened. A voice filled the room, speaking in no known language yet somehow understandable to every being present. Human genetic signature confirmed. Activating Precursor Directive 7. The walls of the chamber transformed, becoming transparent and revealing an enormous data visualization, a map of the galaxy unlike any the hegemony had ever created. It showed not political boundaries or resource concentrations, but something far more complex, patterns of connection and isolation between species, evolutionary divergence rates and conflict probability matrices. At the center of it all was Earth, highlighted with a pulsing light. Caretaker species located, announced the voice. Status assessment initiated. Maya stepped back as surprised as anyone by this response. Caretaker species. The voice continued, seemingly responding directly to her question. The species designated human was engineered as the final component in the Galactic Preservation Protocol. Analysis of current development indicates partial activation has occurred. The High Counselors exchanged alarmed glances. What is this protocol? Demanded the fiery counselor. The archive's response filled the chamber with cascading light patterns. The precursors identified a fundamental flaw in intelligent species evolution. Specialized adaptation creates brilliance but inhibits cooperation between radically different minds. This leads inevitably to conflict and eventual extinction when major cosmic threats emerge. The display shifted to show historical data, evidence, of previous galactic civilizations that had risen and fallen long before the current era, each destroyed not by external threats but by their own inability to unify diverse species into a cohesive whole. The Caretaker Initiative was our solution, continued the archive. We engineered a species with unique capabilities, neural plasticity sufficient to comprehend radically different perspectives, stress adaptation systems that enhance performance rather than degrading it, and social coordination that scales from small groups to planetary populations. Maya looked around at the stunned faces of the galactic leaders. You engineered us to connect different species? Correct. Humans were designed as adaptive interfaces, organisms capable of understanding, translating, and mediating between minds too different to communicate directly. Your combat capabilities are secondary features, necessary for survival until your primary function could activate. The display shifted again, showing the recent conflicts between humans and various hegemony factions. The archive analyzed the footage dispassionately. Current assessment: premature activation of defensive protocols due to threat perception. Recommendation: immediate transition to primary function to prevent cascade militarization. Dravteth stepped forward. Are you claiming humans are not meant to be warriors? Humans are generalists, replied the archive. They become what circumstances require. In isolation and under threat, they become defenders. In diverse communities facing complex challenges, they become connectors. Both capabilities were engineered intentionally. As the archive spoke, the data visualization shifted to the galaxy's rim, where strange energy patterns were beginning to appear. Warning, announced the archive, its tone shifting. Gamma radiation surge detected in Sector 117. Pattern matches precursor threat classification. Stellar devourer. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. Something was coming. something the precursors had predicted millions of years ago, something dangerous enough that they had engineered an entire species as part of a preparation strategy. "What is a stellar devourer?" asked the plant-like counselor. "A cosmic entity that consumes stellar energy," replied the archive. Previous galactic civilizations were destroyed by such entities when interspecies conflict prevented unified response. The gamma radiation pattern indicates arrival within 50 standard years. Maya found her voice again. "And you believe humans are needed to help face this threat?" "Humans are not needed for direct combat," the archive clarified. "Humans are needed for what comes before, the unification of diverse species into a cooperative whole capable of responding with combined strengths rather than isolated specializations." Understanding dawned on Maya's face. "We're not the special forces. We're the ones who make special forces possible, by helping different species work together." "Correct," confirmed the archive. "Humans are bridges between minds that evolved to think differently. The nightmare scenario is not human aggression. It is human absence when diverse minds must act as one." The council chamber had grown utterly silent. The implications were staggering. Humanity had been placed among them not as conquerors or even as equals, but as facilitators, a species engineered to help the rest of the galaxy transcend its divisions before an existential threat arrived. Dravteth was the first to speak. "If what this archive says is true, our approach to humans has been counterproductive." "Indeed," agreed the fiery counselor. "We have been triggering their defensive protocols when we should have been engaging their connective ones." Maya looked around at the gathered leaders, seeing the shift in their perception. The precursors couldn't predict exactly what the galaxy would look like when humans finally reached the stars. They couldn't know what challenges we would face together. But they understood something fundamental. That diversity is strength, but only if different minds can truly work together. She gestured to the display showing the approaching threat. "We have time to prepare, but only if we start now. Not as separate spee.